Hey everyone, it's Mike here from The Art of Guitar. I know Metallica just celebrated 40 years of being a band. I think that's incredible. It's hard enough to stay together as a band for 1 year, so that's a huge accomplishment. But it really made me go back and realize that I actually owned Metallica music on 4 different formats. And today I wanted to talk about each one and real quick just talk about the benefits and maybe the downside to each one, as well as tell you what my favorite format was and see if you disagree or agree. I know a lot of people these days, even the concept of an album is kind of strange because everybody's so used to streaming where you just get whatever songs you want. So this might be a trip down memory lane for some people, and to others they might not be able to relate to this at all, but let's get started. I'm going to be doing this backwards, by the way. I'm going to start with my absolute favorite format and then work my way to my least favorite format, and I have a surprise somewhere in the middle for you. So in my opinion, all things considered, I would have to say that the CD was the best format for me to listen to Metallica in my life. When I was very young, my grandma had the very first CD player out of anyone I ever knew. She was always ahead of her time. And it was one of those things where she would tell me how it worked, but I never understood it. She would say like lasers would hit the disc and it would create the music. It never made sense to me, but it made me really interested in this thing called a compact disc. So many years went by and my mom ended up getting a boombox with a CD player inside. And so I got real excited because I finally had a chance to actually go out and buy one and listen to it on a device. So I picked up And Justice for All and Kill 'Em All. And I still remember the sound of the CD starting up. That was such a big deal at the time for me to hear the CD start up, for the laser to engage, and all of a sudden I would hear the beginning of Hit the Lights fade in, or the beginning of Blackened fading in. And what was so cool was up until that point, I didn't have this ability to skip around to different parts of songs easily. So all of a sudden I'd hit a button and it would go to the next track. And it was such a big deal. It sounds really funny these days, but it was such a crazy thing to go from Hit the Lights instantly to Four Horsemen. And it also helped when I wanted to learn guitar with it because I could go to any song I wanted to instantly. So if I wanted to learn the beginning of Seek and Destroy, I would just go to that track and boom, there it was. Which is different from what I was used to because I was used to cassettes mostly. And so you'd have to hit rewind and just sort of guess where the next song was. Or you could do that thing where you hit play and then fast forward. It would make that high screeching sound. And then when you finally heard silence, you knew you were on the next track, but that could take a long time. I really love the size of the insert in a CD. And I'm a huge fan of like the artwork that used to go along with certain albums. And also I loved reading the lyrics along with the song. So I really got good at memorizing lyrics because I would listen to the song, read the lyrics at the same time. And before I knew it, I had a lot of them internalized. And I think to this day that has helped me with my musical memory. One of the biggest downfalls of CDs is I got a little bit too relaxed with them, and I would take them out and throw them on the bed, put the other one in, and before I knew it, I would scratch them. I didn't know at the time that I could actually buff those out. They had things made for that. So I had a lot of scratch CDs that eventually I either had to replace or just live with them skipping at certain locations. Some of them got so bad that I couldn't play them anymore, and that was a huge bummer. So that's one of the few downfalls of having the CDs. My second favorite format were vinyl albums. When I first got into Metallica, I saw the one video on TV, on MTV actually, back when they played music videos. And I was like, I have to get this cassette. That's what I really wanted because my cousin had the cassette of And Justice for All. But my stepdad convinced me to buy the actual record, the vinyl, because he had such a nice system that he said, what we'll do is we'll take the vinyl and we'll dub it onto a blank cassette. And so it'll always sound great. Anytime the cassette gets worn out, which we'll talk about later, you could redub it. And so it's a win-win situation. So you have this gigantic album. And by the way, I found these today. This is the actual album I bought for my very first Metallica vinyl. It's got all the classic, the back of it. This is going to seem weird to some people that are just used to streaming, but oh wow, there's a whole bunch of stuff inside. Wow, look at that. That's my old metal band. A Sanctus thing with a set list on the back. Holy crap. Whoa, I just found a bunch of old memorabilia from my old metal band. I'll have to get into that later. Okay, so that's the insert that I remember looking at and looking at the artwork and reading the lyrics. And I knew the lyrics to some of the tunes before I even heard the song. And then this is always exciting. Now, the problem is it's a double album. That's cool. But whenever I wanted to go to the next song after And Justice for All in this case, there's only 2 songs on this side. So I had to flip it over And then you had Eye of the Beholder on one. But I remember putting it on the other side, putting the needle on the record and hearing the beginning of Eye of the Beholder fading in. I thought that was really cool. It's funny because I was going to surprise you guys with the actual album, and then I ended up surprising myself with all this other stuff. I was so excited about that album that I went out and bought Ride the Lightning afterwards. Oh wow, there's stuff in here too. It looks like it's just a picture from a magazine with Cliff Burton on it. I thought I was going to have to go on Google and just show you pictures of other people's records, but very excited I found my own. But the sound of vinyl, of course, is unmatched. It just has this great warm quality to it. I know there's a lot of arguments between vinyl and CD and what the difference is, but I don't know, there's just a more organic feeling whenever I play records. Maybe it's the scratchy sound. There's a lot to it that's probably just mental. But I'll always love the fact that I actually own these and that at one time this was my main way of listening to Metallica. The downsides are that they're bulky, obviously. It's hard to just bring a whole bunch over to your friend's house without bringing a whole box with you. You know, they used to have crates full of records that you would bring around. And then also they could get scratched easily. They're hard to learn guitar with because you have to move the needle to where you need it to go. And I don't know, it's kind of a bummer. People actually used to slow down records back in the day, retune their guitars to it so that they could play along to slower tempos. My third favorite format are cassettes. And I remember having the albums, obviously you just saw them, Ride the Lightning and Injustice for All. So I'm like, I need Master of Puppets. So what I ended up doing was I ended up going out to a place called Kmart that were big back when I was a kid. And I bought the cassette for Master of Puppets and I played it so many times because I was trying to learn it as well. I wore it out. I had to go back and buy another one. That one ended up getting eaten. If you know anything about cassettes, the little tape that's inside could get stuck inside the machine. And then you try to pull it out. Sometimes you can fix it with a pencil. Sometimes it just rips and you're out of luck. So I had to go back and buy it again, a total of 3 different times, I believe, that I had to go back to Kmart to buy Master of Puppets. But it was completely worth it. I love cassettes because they sound great. They're compact. Like you could put them in your pocket easily. You could trade them with friends at school. That was always a cool thing to do. Some of the downfalls, like I said, though, it could get eaten. It's easy to kind of destroy the tape. They could get worn out. If you're trying to learn guitar with it, there's a lot of rewinding and guessing and just trying to hope that you're at the right part. If not, there's a lot of searching you have to do. If you've ever used a cassette player, you know what I'm talking about. And then the inserts are okay. They're kind of small, so they usually fold out, and then you can read the lyrics, but still you're still doing this kind of stuff when you're trying to read. And my least favorite format, no surprise probably, is the MP3 format. And a lot of people will say, well, you never really owned them if you got them off the internet for free or whatever. And that's true. In the beginning, we had a thing called LimeWire. I'm not sure if you remember that. And that was a little bit after Napster, I believe, when LimeWire came out. But my friend had LimeWire, and all of a sudden I show up to the studio, and he's like, you know what? I have every Metallica album in one folder. And it seemed weird to me because I was so used to the other formats that I was used to listening to music on. And so I went on the computer and I'm like, oh, there's a folder called Metallica. And I clicked it and every single album was on there. And I remember getting excited at first because I'm like, this changes everything. I'm just going to listen to all this music. I'm so excited about it. But what ended up happening was I never really listened to any of it. I would sometimes drag a few of my favorite songs onto another folder if I was trying to learn them. But I never found myself sitting and listening to all the songs like I used to back when I had to do it on cassette or CD or album. It was kind of a nightmare there. I remember going on and it would say Master of Puppets by Slayer. There was all this weird mislabeling. You guys probably remember that if you remember back in the day. And then, of course, there were viruses that you would download on certain MP3s. It was a mess. There was really no artwork. You had to look up the lyrics on another site. So I felt a little more detached from the music. And even though I did feel more detached from the music in the MP3 format, it was really easy to scroll around and find like where the solo was. So it was really easy to learn guitar too. So that's an advantage of it. But the fact that I didn't really feel connected to these albums anymore in this format, in the MP3 format, really makes it my least favorite of all 4. And the reason I could say this is a format I owned is because shortly after that, Apple came out with their MP3 service, and you could just buy like a full Metallica album in MP3 format. So I would do that, and this is before streaming. So I had a whole bunch of songs that I could put on an iPod at the time or whatever kind of MP3 player I had. And then eventually streaming came out and all that went out the door. So I did technically own MP3s back in the day. So let me know in the comments what your favorite format is. If you're older like me and you remember all these different formats, I'm excited to hear maybe your first experience with maybe your first album or your first CD or whatever. That'd be great to hear about. And I'm going to go through all this memorabilia that I have hid inside these albums. And I'm excited. I have a lot to do tonight. Okay, everyone, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.